His breath was hot against my skin. The ceiling fan barely stirred the thick Hawaiian air as I lay frozen, my body trembling from the waves that had just passed through it. I could still taste the salt from his lips. And something more. Something wrong. Something forbidden. Then he leaned closer, brushed his lips near my ear, and whispered 3 words that split my world open. I came inside. My heart stopped. The room spun. My body was still humming with betrayal, but my mind screamed louder than any storm that ever touched these shores. I turned to face him, to confirm the voice that had just said those words. And it was Andy, my son. I felt the sheets burn. My chest tightened. And in that moment, I knew there was no turning back. But if you think that was the first line ever crossed between us, you are wrong. This was just the night everything shattered. Before I continue, let me take a moment to say thank you. To every one of you who has subscribed to this channel, thank you. Your support means everything. And to all the new and returning viewers who have not yet subscribed, I truly cannot wait for you to hit that button. It is your love and energy that keeps this channel alive and pushing forward. Please do not forget to leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one of them. Now, let me take you back into the story. Because the truth is, I never meant for it to happen. My name is Charlotte. I am 50 years old, and I live on the south shore of Oahu, Hawaii. I have not had a man in my bed since my ex-husband walked out 14 years ago. I raised my son, Andy, alone. He was my pride, my light, the one reason I kept waking up every morning when everything else in me wanted to sleep forever. Andy is 25 now. Tall. Strong. Brown hair like his father's, but his eyes are all mine. He joined the Navy straight out of high school, came back home after his final deployment this summer. It was supposed to be a welcome home visit. It turned into something else entirely. We had always been close. Maybe too close. But I never saw it. Not clearly. Not until that night. We were drinking wine on the lanai. The ocean was calm. The breeze smelled like hibiscus and heat. We laughed about everything. Old stories, his crazy training, how lonely the world felt lately. Then he touched my hand. It should have felt innocent. It did not. His eyes lingered too long on my mouth. My stomach fluttered in ways it had not since I was in my 30s. I should have stopped it. I should have pulled away. But I missed touch. I missed being seen. And that night, Andy looked at me like I was not just his mother. He looked at me like I was a woman. He moved closer. I felt his breath, warm and inviting. And when his lips brushed mine, I kissed him back. That moment rewrote every law I ever lived by. My hands touched skin they were never meant to touch. My body welcomed what it should have rejected. The lines blurred. The morals faded. We ended up on the floor, then the couch, then the bed. And when it was over, when I was still catching my breath and drowning in guilt, he whispered those 3 words. I came inside. My body went cold. I turned my face to him slowly. He looked so peaceful, so proud, so unaware of the madness he had just unleashed. I did not speak. I could not. Because in that instant, I was not his mother. I was something else. Something that scared me to death. I did not sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the waves crashing just beyond the open window, trying to quiet the noise inside my head. Andy was asleep beside me, naked under the sheets we used to fold together on laundry day when he was still a boy. Now those same sheets held the scent of what we had done, and I could not escape it. My thighs ached. My chest felt hollow. My soul screamed behind my silent lips. I got out of bed and walked barefoot to the kitchen. The tile was cool beneath my feet, but my body still burned. I poured myself another glass of wine, hoping it would calm the storm. But the glass shook in my hand, and I knew there was no calming this. No escaping it. How did I let this happen? Let me be honest with you, because this channel is for truth, raw and unfiltered.
I did not plan for that night.
But I also did not stop it. And I need you to understand why. Andy was not just my son. He was everything. After my husband left me for a woman 15 years younger, I stopped being touched, stopped being wanted. I poured everything into Andy. Every kiss on the forehead, every birthday cake, every tear wiped, every late night talk about his fears, his dreams, his breakups. I was not just a mother. I became the only constant in his life. And him in mine. He came back from the Navy, different, broader, stronger, confident. He took charge around the house,
Fixed things. Cooked for me.
he told me I looked beautiful without makeup. Said no man would ever deserve me. He started giving me longer hugs, letting his hands linger on my waist. And I let him, because it felt good to be seen again, touched again, wanted. The morning after that night, I avoided his eyes. I cleaned the kitchen twice, took a long shower, pretended everything was normal. But Andy was watching me. When I finally sat down to eat, he came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my shoulders, and whispered, "You are mine now."
Right?
I dropped my fork. My breath caught. I turned and looked at him. His eyes held no shame, just certainty. I whispered, "We cannot do this, Andy." But his hand slid down my arm, and he said, "We already did." That afternoon, I went for a walk down the shoreline. I cried, not just for what I had done, but for how much I wanted to do it again. Later that night, I tried to keep distance. I told him to sleep in the guest room. He said he would, but he never made it there. At midnight, I felt the weight of his body beside mine again. His hands traced over me like they belonged there. My body gave in faster this time. We moved together like we had done it 100 times. Shame came only after the pleasure, not before. And once again, when it was over, we did not speak. But something changed the next morning. I was in the backyard hanging laundry when I saw Mrs. Heller, our neighbor, standing across her garden. She waved at me, and her eyes held something different. A tightness, a suspicion. Then I saw it. A small white envelope wedged under my front door. I opened it slowly. It was a note, for words, written in sharp, angry handwriting. "I saw you both." My chest collapsed. My hands shook. Someone knew. This secret was not a secret anymore. The fire I had let burn in private now had the power to devour everything in public. And I was not ready for what came next. I held the note in my hand like it was burning through my skin. "I saw you both." For words that threatened to dismantle the life I had built, the lie I had told myself, and the fantasy I had let take root in my home. The wind rustled the palms outside, but inside my chest, everything stood still. Mrs. Heller had always been curious, too curious. She lived alone, retired nurse, as like a hawk, always watching through her curtains with a steaming mug of tea and judgment. But I never imagined she would be watching me. Not like this. I locked the door, closed every window, pulled the blinds. Andy was still asleep upstairs, shirtless, tangled in sheets that should have never touched him. I stared at the note again. My hands would not stop shaking. The fantasy was over. Reality had arrived, and it came with witnesses. I waited until Andy came downstairs. His hair was still damp from the shower, and he looked so young. Too young. He kissed my cheek, reached for a plate, sat across from me like we were a regular mother and son enjoying breakfast. I slid the note across the table. His smile faded the second he read it. He looked up. Do you think she saw us? Everything? I swallowed hard. My voice was a whisper. I do not know. Silence. He clenched his jaw. Let me talk to her.
No.
Let me handle this, Mom. I flinched at that word, Mom. How could he still call me that after what we had done? After what we had become? You will do nothing, I said, standing. We pretend this never happened. Andy rose to his feet. You said that last night. Then you let me back in your bed. That stung. But it was true. I backed away from him, but the wall met my spine. Andy stepped closer. You are not just my mother anymore, he said. You are the woman I love. And I do not care who knows it. I slapped him. Hard. The sound echoed through the kitchen. My own hand stung, but not as much as my chest did. His face turned slowly, his eyes burning, not with rage, but pain. Real pain. And then he left. He walked out the front door and did not come back for 3 days. I spent those nights drowning in questions.
Who was I now?
What had I done? What would happen if someone reported us? What if he told someone? What if I was arrested?
Shunned? Disowned? Then
I saw the police car, parked across the street, idle, watching. My throat dried. I stepped outside, waved nervously. The officer did not wave back. I could not breathe. I could not eat. I vomited twice that morning. I felt like a criminal in my own home. Because I was one. Andy returned on the 4th night. Sunburned, eyes swollen. He had been sleeping on the beach. He dropped to his knees at my feet. I am sorry, he said. I should have protected you. I should not have come back that night. But I love you, Charlotte. Not as a son, as a man. I wept. There was nothing else I could do. He wrapped his arms around my waist and pressed his face into my stomach like he used to as a child. I stroked his hair. My tears fell into it, and I realized it was over, not because the fire had died, but because I could not live in hiding anymore. I sent Andy to live with a friend on the other side of the island. I left town 2 weeks later, sold the house, changed my name, deleted every photo I had of us. I buried that woman, the one who made the most dangerous mistake of her life, in the sands of Hawaii. But sometimes, at night, when I close my eyes, I still hear his voice. I came inside, and I wonder, what if that night never ended? Desire does not follow rules. Love does not always wear the right face. And sometimes, the loneliest people make the most unforgivable choices, just to feel alive again. I do not ask for your forgiveness. I already know I will never get it. But if you have ever crossed a line so deep that it redefined who you are, then maybe, just maybe, you understand me. Even if only a little. What do you think? Was I a mother or a monster? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And please, subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, raw, intense, and real. Because sometimes the truth is darker than fiction, and it lives inside people like me.